More than 71 years after its birth, the alliance is going through a delicate phase. NATO is not only facing conventional and nuclear threats, but also non-traditional emerging security challenges, as mentioned, such as cyber, hybrid, disruptive technologies, non-state actors, terrorism, broad geopolitical instability, particularly in the southern flank, and pandemic. Against all these challenges and threats, NATO must continue its adaptation process in order to remain effective and credible vis-à-vis both its challengers and the allied public opinion. And this is particularly true when we look at the southern flank, as I will try to elaborate during this intervention. The so-called great power competition inserts an additional layer of complexity since it reduces the extent of possible cooperation within the international community. However, cooperation is crucial if we want to deliver effective global responses to common security challenges such as those mentioned before. In this new strategic environment, the alliance becomes even more important than before, because NATO is a military alliance, but it is also, I would dare say, primarily a security organization founded on common values and interests. However, NATO needs to adapt. The new strategic environment places the alliance at the crossroad of several geopolitical tensions. In the middle of such a new struggle for global power, of global supremacy, we need to ask ourselves how to preserve the center of gravity of the Euro-Atlantic area. In other words, the Allies' political and strategic cohesion and the military solidarity and integration, how to avoid excessive discrepancies between the two shores of the Atlantic, if not between different shores in the same Euro-Mediterranean region. These are just a couple of questions that are being addressed in the reflection process aimed at strengthening the political dimension of the alliance. As decided during the NATO leaders meeting, Marta knows very well because she's she's member of the group of experts named by NATO Secretary General. Italy believes that the alliance should not be put into question, both in terms of relevance and of founding principles. Shared democracy values and the collective defense are the strongest linkage between North America and Europe. Our security is indivisible. Our shared security is indivisible, and both allied consensus and the role of the North Atlantic Council are the supreme guarantee of the effectiveness of the transatlantic bonds. The 2010 strategic concept is still perfectly valid for us. Its Article 15 envisaged prophetically the human dimension of security. Similarly, NATO-EU cooperation must remain a strategic commitment for both sides. Italy strongly believes in the so-called strategic autonomy of Europe, that is full complementarity with the transatlantic link and as a reinforcing element of a fair and effective burden share. The European Union needs to be a credible security provider in the interests both of NATO and of its own citizens. Tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean are, of course, a source of concerns, also in terms of unity, cohesion, and credibility of the alliance. We welcome the new situation, the establishment by Greece and Turkey of a bilateral military deconfliction mechanism. And this is also an example of how NATO, of course, it's an outcome of the efforts made by Secretary General Stoltenberg, but also a constructive approach made by both sides, and it's an example of how the alliance could overcome incidents among allies through dialogue. Some could argue that in a global struggle for power, we need the so-called global NATO. In my opinion, we should ask ourselves whether a global NATO would really remain the strongest and united alliance that history has experienced so far. I don't think so. The regional focus of the alliance devoted to the security and defense of the Euro-Atlantic area is a significant part of NATO's strength, both geopolitics and value matters. Challenges and threats can be global, but they matter to NATO to the extent that they have an impact on its own region, that is the Euro-Atlantic area. The increasing influence played by Russia and China is the broader South, in the broader South reinforce this belief, adding renewed pieces to the already known argument of how much terrorism, instability, human security, and climate change affects in different ways the security of the Euro-Atlantic area. At the same time, I believe that it is of paramount importance to maintain a clear difference on how NATO deals with both Russia and China. These two actors are global players and that often act in different ways and in a variety of geographical areas, pursuing different aims. They can leverage on a variety of military and non-military tools. For instance, Russia has been strengthening its presence in military terms in several regions, meddling with crises that have a direct impact on our security, like Syria and Libya. At the same time, Russia is both a recognized NATO challenger and an indispensable interlocutor for dealing with security issues pertaining to the stability of the Euro-Atlantic area. Speaking about Russia, let me recall that Italy has always emphasized that the backbone of NATO-Russia relations should remain the NATO-Russia Founding Act, and how much we need to keep alive the spirit of Pratica di Mare, including through periodic, meaningful and focused meeting of the NATO-Russia Council. NATO must keep its dual-track approach vis-à-vis Moscow, that is, deterrence and dialogue. On the other hand, China has generally been increasing its presence, primarily at the economic level, engaging a great deal of nations through a holistic approach. Of course, China's geopolitical strategy has security implications, including for NATO, and allied need to improve their understanding about it. However, we must avoid depicting Beijing as a sort of new enemy of the alliance. On the contrary, we must take forward the balanced approach that NATO leaders agreed upon in London, developing a better understanding of both challenges and opportunities relevant to NATO, of the Chinese growing influence in the regional, in the international arena. To conclude, more than 71 years of history, successes and adaptation suggest that NATO has the right DNA to evolve at the speed of relevance. We are confident that the reflection process launched in London will further strengthen NATO's political cohesion in order to enhance its ability to share and act upon a common strategic political vision, so that it remains capable of facing the variety of threats and challenges while defending and promoting our common values. And I've heard a lot of suggestions and ideas that could help to do this work. Thank you.